A Dalton home that she leased to Mayor Tiffany Henyard has filed eviction papers. She says Henyard has not paid her rent. Now,
Dalton, a town of just 200 residents, finds itself engulfed in controversy, with much of the turmoil traced back to the embattled tenure of Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Once a community eager for steady leadership, Dalton now grapples with scandal after scandal, many tied directly to Henyard's decisions. One of the most alarming incidents is her appointment of a police chief who lacks the legal qualifications to serve as a police officer, a decision critics say epitomizes the dysfunction of her administration. Since taking office, Henyard has faced allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and political favoritism. Detractors argue her focus is less on governance and more on consolidating power, regardless of the consequences. Serious accusations include embezzling taxpayer funds, misusing township resources for personal benefit, and appointing allies based on loyalty rather than competence. The police chief controversy has particularly fueled public outrage, with residents questioning how such a blatant oversight was allowed to occur. Public safety has become a growing concern, with reports of delayed emergency responses and resource mismanagement. Critics view Henyard's leadership as a liability, calling her handling of public concerns negligent and irresponsible. Despite mounting pressure, Henyard has remained defiant, dismissing criticisms as politically motivated attacks aimed at undermining her leadership. For residents, however, such explanations ring hollow. Dalton continues to suffer from crumbling infrastructure, escalating crime rates, and a local government in chaos. Instead of addressing these pressing issues, Henyard's administration is often accused of prioritizing personal enrichment and power consolidation. Lavish spending, questionable policies, and escalating tensions with residents have only deepened the crisis. National attention has turned to Dalton, with the town's turmoil becoming a political spectacle. Henyard's supporters argue she is the target of a smear campaign, citing resistance to her as the first female mayor of Dalton. They claim she is held to a harsher standard than her predecessors and faces undue criticism from entrenched political interests opposed to change. Yet this defense hasn't quelled the frustration of many residents, who are increasingly disillusioned by her administration's apparent inability to address their needs. Henyard's confrontational style, marked by fiery rhetoric and public disputes, has further fractured the community. Rumors of financial misconduct and abuse of power have prompted external scrutiny, including an FBI investigation. If these allegations are substantiated, the consequences could spell disaster not only for Henyard, but for Dalton as a whole. For a town of Dalton's size, the stakes are immense. What began as a hopeful push for progress under Henyard's leadership has spiraled into chaos, leaving residents unsure whether their government is capable of steering the town out of crisis. Can Tiffany Henyard overcome the mounting scandals and restore trust, or will her leadership end under the weight of control syndrome? As Dalton continues to seek stability, the answers remain uncertain, but the clock is ticking for a community in desperate need of change.
Well, for the first time in many weeks, Dalton trustees and Mayor Tiffany Henyard held a public meeting together, but not as
Ronald Burge, handpicked by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard to lead the town's police department, has officially been declared inactive by the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. In layman's terms, Burge does not meet the minimum requirements to serve as a police officer, let alone head a department. Despite this damning revelation, Mayor Henyard remains steadfast, continuing to back her controversial appointment. Latest scandal is just one more chapter in Dalton's political drama, which has turned the small Illinois town into a hotbed of controversy under Henyard's leadership. Critics argue Burge's appointment exemplifies the dysfunction that has become synonymous with her tenure, a pattern that includes alleged misuse of taxpayer funds for lavish events, employing police as personal security, and even indulging in theatrical antics that critics say trivialize her role. Henyard named Burge police chief in September. His appointment has faced intense scrutiny. The Dalton Village Board of Trustees protested immediately, claiming the mayor lacked the authority to make such a decision without their approval. However, Henyard ignored their objections and pressed forward, bypassing governance protocols meant to ensure checks and balances. The controversy deepened when it was revealed that Burge did not meet Illinois state law's basic requirements to serve as a police officer. Certification standards mandate rigorous training, up-to-date qualifications, and adherence to state regulations. Burge's inactive status reflected his failure to meet these standards, including missing key recertifications, such as a firearms qualification exam. This revelation raised serious concerns about public safety and the credibility of Henyard's administration. Henyard defended Burge, calling him the best candidate for the job and dismissing critics as politically motivated detractors. However, her insistence appeared to many as less about finding a qualified leader for Dalton's police department and more about consolidating power by installing a loyal ally in a key position. Some critics accused Henyard of undermining public safety to push her own agenda, a claim echoed by frustrated residents and local leaders. As backlash mounted, the village board took legal action to block Burge's appointment. A temporary restraining order briefly prevented him from serving as police chief, but Henyard continued to challenge the board in court. Ultimately, a judge permitted Burge to serve as interim chief for 30 days, while both parties sought a permanent resolution. However, the situation took a turn when the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board formally stated that Burge was unqualified not only to lead, but also to carry out the basic functions of an officer, including carrying a firearm. This revelation was a tipping point. Many viewed it as proof of Henyard's poor judgment, adding to a growing list of scandals that have marked her time in office. Critics contend that Henyard prioritized political loyalty over competence, ignoring the broader implications for Dalton's public safety and governance. Even some of Henyard's staunchest supporters began to express doubt, as the Burge controversy highlighted deeper issues in her administration. Beyond the Burge debacle, Henyard's tenure has been mired in allegations of financial mismanagement, misuse of resources, and tensions with the village board. Outside agencies, including the Illinois Attorney General's Office and the FBI, are reportedly investigating her administration for potential misconduct and abuse of power. Dalton, a town already struggling with poverty, shares a town already struggling with poverty. Crumbling infrastructure and rising crime has been further destabilized by the ongoing political circus. Public trust in local leadership continues to erode, leaving residents deeply frustrated and uncertain about their future. The Burge controversy underscores larger questions about leadership, transparency, and accountability in Dalton. With new scandals emerging regularly and the town sharply divided, Henyard faces mounting pressure to answer for her actions and regain the public's trust. Whether this crisis will bring lasting change or deepen Dalton's divisions remains uncertain. One thing is clear: Henyard's administration is under intense scrutiny, and the stakes for the future of Dalton have never been higher.
Word one, it says 100%, 100% one, 100% two, and that could be a lot of things. Let's get it straight at once. When's it going to start? When's it going to end?
The appointment of Ronald Burge as police chief in Dothan, Illinois, has stirred significant controversy in the small town, revealing deeper issues about political decision-making, accountability, and governance. The decision to appoint a man so clearly unqualified for the role has shaken the confidence of many residents, leaving them questioning the motives behind such an appointment and whether the town's leadership values loyalty over competence. It's not only a matter of poor judgment, but also a failure in protecting the safety and integrity of the community. Burge's qualifications were seriously questioned when it was revealed that he did not meet the necessary legal requirements to serve as a law enforcement officer. Despite being entrusted with the important responsibility of overseeing Dothan's police department, an office that includes authority to carry a firearm and supervise law enforcement activities, Burge had failed to maintain the certification required by Illinois law. In fact, the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board officially deemed him inactive, legally prohibiting him from performing the duties of a police officer. However, Mayor Tiffany Henyard has remained resolute in her decision to keep Burge in the role, with no plans to reconsider despite the undeniable gap in his qualifications. This situation begs the question, why would Henyard push forward with such a controversial decision? While some might dismiss it as an isolated incident, critics point to a disturbing pattern in Henyard's leadership. A growing number of residents and local political observers believe Henyard's actions are part of a broader strategy in which loyalty and political allegiance supersede the need for professionalism and competence. This controversial pattern of making decisions based on personal and political interests rather than merit has become a hallmark of Henyard's administration. For example, Henyard has faced accusations of surrounding herself with a loyal circle of supporters who are appointed to high-ranking positions, without regard for their qualifications. Local media and residents have repeatedly expressed concerns that Henyard has stacked her administration with individuals who will not challenge her authority, relying on them to maintain a power base rather than to serve the needs of the community. Doton residents summed up this sentiment with a harsh but telling comment, saying that Henyard hires and recruits like a mob boss. While this comparison may seem extreme to some, it highlights a growing sense of disillusionment among residents, who feel that the town's leadership has veered away from merit-based selections and toward a political ecosystem driven by loyalty, obedience, and a lack of transparency. In her tenure as mayor, Henyard has made numerous appointments, especially within law enforcement, that have raised eyebrows. She is a major contributor to the businesses of Chicago in the province of marijuana. Some of these decisions, particularly the hiring of officers with questionable backgrounds and the installation of political allies into powerful positions, further reinforce the belief that Henyard's leadership is primarily motivated by personal allegiance rather than a commitment to the people of Doton. Approach has resulted in an atmosphere where the administration is more focused on consolidating power than on fostering an effective and accountable government. Henyard's appointments have often disregarded the qualifications of the individuals in favor of building an insular group of supporters who are beholden to her for their positions. As a result, it's become clear to many residents that Henyard's primary goal seems to be securing political loyalty rather than addressing the real needs and concerns of Doton's residents. The continued presence of Berg in his role as police chief, despite his failure to meet legal qualifications and his controversial past, is a glaring example of the flawed logic behind this decision-making pattern. Berg's history in law enforcement is troubling at best. Before his appointment in Doton, he had served as a police chief in neighboring towns like Dixmoor and Harvey. During his tenure in these roles, Berg faced multiple lawsuits, many of which involved accusations of political retaliation, misconduct, and employment disputes. These controversies follow Berg wherever he goes, yet Henyard has steadfastly supported him, despite his clear unfitness for the role. In the face of growing public backlash and legal concerns, Henyard's defense of Berg is even more perplexing. The Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board not only questioned Berg's qualifications, but also actively urged Henyard to remove him from the police chief position until he met all required training standards. Yet instead of taking the advice of the board, whose purpose is to ensure that law enforcement officials meet proper training and legal standards, Henyard has continued to back Berg. She appears determined to hold on to him, regardless of the surrounding controversies. Further fueling concerns about her leadership priorities is not just the legal questions surrounding Berg that have raised alarm among Doton residents. The bigger issue is the fundamental nature of Henyard's decision to ignore the board's official warning and to stand by a figure with a checkered past and no legal right to serve in such a significant role. Critics have suggested that Henyard's insistence on supporting Berg is part of a broader strategy to consolidate political power. The theory is that by surrounding herself with individuals who owe their positions to her, Henyard ensures they will remain loyal, making them less likely to challenge her authority or threaten her political standing. As one local political observer put it, Henyard may see Berg as more of an asset in maintaining her personal power base than as a qualified leader for the police department. His lack of qualifications and problematic history may not be viewed as negatives by Henyard. Instead, they may be seen as characteristics that make him more malleable and loyal to her. This approach undermines the town's safety and trust in law enforcement, but it strengthens Henyard's grip on Doton's political machinery. Another possible explanation for Henyard's decisions and the broader culture of political patronage under her leadership is her apparent affinity for controversy and the spotlight. Henyard has built a reputation over the years as a mayor who relishes the attention and drama that come with her bold, often divisive decisions. This is especially evident in her public appearances and actions, such as her penchant for wearing attention-grabbing outfits during town meetings and frequently stirring conflicts with political opponents. Some suggest that Henyard thrives on controversy, using it as a way to remain the focal point of conversation in Doton. By keeping Burge in place, Henyard may be manipulating public opinion, turning the controversy into an opportunity to dominate the media narrative. Henyard's controversial style isn't just limited to political decisions. It permeates the way she governs, as evidenced by the town's deteriorating physical and economic condition under her leadership. As residents point out, Doton's finances are in disarray, local businesses are struggling, and the town's police department is in chaos. The controversy surrounding Burge's appointment is just one symptom of a much larger issue: mismanagement. There are even residents who have expressed dismay over seemingly trivial matters, like the removal of trees from local parks and streets, a move that many view as symbolic of the larger loss of character and identity in the town. One local resident, Antoinette, captured the sentiment many feel when she remarked in an interview, "That Henyard is really ruining the town." It is not just about public policy, but the larger sense that Henyard's leadership is steering Doton in a downward trajectory. The loss of trees, a visual marker of the town's transformation among residents. As Henyard continues to face mounting pressure to remove Burge and address the lack of transparency in her administration, there is also growing scrutiny of her broader political approach. As conquerors control over buildings for a long time, some residents have even compared her leadership to that of an authoritarian ruler, likening her to controversial figures such as Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela, whose political control is reinforced by his constant self-promotion and dominance over public discourse. Henriette's face, appearing on billboards across town, has become a point of contention. Critics argue that the emphasis on her personal image, combined with her refusal to heed the calls for reform, represents a disregard for the broader community in favor of self-promotion and the maintenance of her power. With a new election approaching, the stakes have never been higher for Henyard. Residents are increasingly vocal in their desire for change. Her challenger, Jason's House, has focused his campaign on accountability, transparency, and cleaning up the mess left by Henyard's administration. His message is resonating with many Doton residents who have had enough of the constant scandals and turmoil under Henyard's leadership. House's promise of a more responsible government could mark a turning point for Doton, but Henyard is not backing down without a fight. She has already announced her bid for re-election and boldly declared that she plans to win by a landslide, echoing the rhetoric of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Whether this prediction proves true remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the upcoming election will be pivotal for the future of Doton S. Of now, Burge's future as police chief remains uncertain, and Henyard's administration appears set to face ongoing legal challenges. The Board of Trustees is poised to take legal action, and it is clear that the tension between Henyard and the rest of the town's political establishment will continue to escalate. The next few months could determine whether Doton's leadership will shift toward reform or whether Henyard's grip on power will persist, leaving the town in a state of turmoil for years to come. Regardless of the outcome, the Doton controversy raises crucial questions about the role of political loyalty in local governance and the dangers of prioritizing personal allegiance over competence. As the town faces mounting challenges, it is evident that Doton needs leadership based on transparency, accountability, and professionalism to move forward. The choice for the future of the town will ultimately be in the hands of its residents, whether they opt for a new direction or continue down the path set by Henyard. Only time will tell, but it is clear that the situation in Doton has reached a crossroads, with the town's future hanging in the balance.